delegated acts and are particular to each product group. And here you can see how the DPP works in practice. A customer, user, or maybe a machine scans the data carrier from the product, for example, a QR code, with a mobile phone or with other reading device, and the DPP is read. Then a customer or user can read information that is public or otherwise permitted to his or her from the screen of a device, for instance, a mobile phone. And as I already mentioned earlier, certain information may be restricted and shown only to specific user groups, such as repairers or individuals involved in reuse and recycling activities, rather than being available to all users. The DPP provides different functions and benefits for different users. For consumers, the DPP gives key information on the origin of products, and with wider information, consumers can more easily compare products and make informed purchasing decisions. At this moment, the goal is that users can also add information to the DPP, for instance, for aftermarket needs, but this is one of the open items that will be confirmed later in so-called delegated acts. And maybe I then choose this last one, competitiveness. So with advanced digitalization, companies can utilize DPP requirements for business advantage in dynamic European markets, ensuring their eligibility in the EU market and improving their overall competitiveness. But let's move to the timeline for product passports. Batteries regulation and eco-design regulation have already been published in years 2023 and 2024, and they lay kind of foundation for the future legislation and also for the DPP requirements. So-called work plan was published last spring, and it outlines the product groups that will be among the first to require DPPs. More detailed regulation concerning the DPP, such as specifications regarding which data points should be included, will be released in the near future. The estimation is that in year 26 or 27, the first so-called delegated acts will be published. Here on the right side, you can see product groups for which the DPP is required first. Batteries, textiles, and iron and steel are among the first ones, and delegated acts concerning them are currently under development. The second wave will include tires, furniture, and electronic devices, as you can see on the right. So, the DPP is created from the data that is shared across the value chain, requiring, of course, collaboration among different actors. DPP data offers a comprehensive perspective on a product's life cycle, enabling organizations to identify opportunities for value chain optimization and to develop new business models. Here you can see an image of a general value chain. In the upstream, there are raw material production and so on. In the middle are manufacturers and importers, and quite often these actors are responsible for the implementation of the DPP. Simplified, could be said that upstream actors and manufacturers provide a great deal of information for the DPP, and downstream actors such as repairers, reusers, and recyclers can utilize information. Of course, Use phase data may also be stored in the DPP to enhance product lifecycle management and related processes. But as already mentioned earlier, further information regarding the storage of use phase data will be specified in delegated acts. The organization who brings the product to the EU market is responsible for providing the product passports. And in practice, typically this is producer, manufacturer, importer, or brand owner. The producer collects information in collaboration with other actors in the value chain. And here you can see what kind of data producers and users there might be. On the right side, some typical data needs regarding the DPP are listed. At least data concerning materials and raw materials, information on origin and environmental impact of raw materials, manufacturer and place of manufacturing methods and phases, use of energy and resources, use and maintenance instructions, and recycling and disposal instructions are needed. And the detailed data content definitions will be published in delegated acts, and the first ones we are hoping to get them in 26 or 27. I will skip this one, but let's go to the who uses the product passport data. Data can be utilized not only by actors within the value chain, but also actors like public administration authorities, decision makers, social and economic stakeholders, and those developing solutions based on the DPP. And here you can see an image of different stakeholders which may benefit from DPP data. It is beneficial if data collected in the DPP can be utilized in various ways. But at the same time, it is essential to ensure users' rights to access and use the data as well as protect business secrets. Companies can utilize the DPP in different ways and intensity. The left side is kind of minimum level where regulatory requirements is the target for the company. This level is enough to ensure that the product is suitable for EU market from a legislation perspective. More ambitious basis is to utilize data to improve and develop own business. For instance, develop customer interaction or sustainability reporting based on DPP data. The most ambitious level is to build new business based on DPP data, which must be sufficiently comprehensive and detailed. This requires enriching and defining knowledge and creating and sharing value in new ways. Increased transparency and data sharing opens up new opportunities. The DPP brings partners' businesses closer to each other through data. The DPP also opens up a view of other manufacturers' product information. There are some opportunities to use DPP data illustrated and organized in 4 themes in this picture. Data can be used for managing supply chain, improving circular economy, value chain management, and safe end of life management. The image is designed to assist in identifying important and potential data use cases relevant to the company. Next, one can think about what data would be needed for the development work. Think about who would you need as partner to implement targets for development, and then carry on. And finally, I will say something about the future prospects. Here are some thoughts on the potential future direction of the DPP. In 10 years, the DPP will use reliable, interoperable data for efficient management and automation across the product lifecycle. AI and advanced technologies will support diverse application of DPP data. Consumers are actively engaged in providing product information. They can buy and sell second-hand products on platforms where pricing is automatic and long-lasting products are as daily life. On the other hand, reliable data helps companies make better decisions regarding materials, production, logistics, recycling, and more. For example, if components prove to be defective, it is possible to quickly find out which products the component in question has been used in and make necessary recalls and repairs. The DPP offers new perspectives on product development, building services, and a customer experience by utilizing product information. Another aspect of data management is maintaining robust data protection and respecting related rights. Here are some expected use cases for the DPP in the future. Customers may receive additional information about the product, such as user manuals or updated maintenance instructions. Services such as warranty registration and discounts on additional services and maintenance contracts can also be linked to the DPP. The DPP can be used to collect user feedback and ratings regarding aspects such as condition and functionality of the product. On the other hand, DPP data can be utilized in preventive maintenance service models. Analyzing usage data allows for the automatic pricing of used products and facilitates value sharing among partners in the value chain. DPP data can also be used for environmental impact assessment, product design, and environmental reporting. And now I will give the floor to Kristiina, so I just skip this slide and now it's Kristiina, your turn.
Okay, thank you. So hello everyone also on my behalf, and my topic today is this technical development side of DPP. And I thought that it might be now most useful to use our time for taking a look at this maybe a more general development, what is happening at the European level, because it's very progressing very much at the moment, and also will have a significant impact also for single manufacturers, what they can or should do. So I have selected the subtopics for my presentation, so that first I will present this European DPP vision for the technical DPP system. Also, what are the building blocks for that? Then we take a look at this DPP standardization status, and for the last part I have also some aspects for manufacturers. So next slide, please. So this first one is now kind of motivation slide. I picked these direct quotes from this smart manufacturing white paper, which is produced by this Sensenelec Smart Manufacturing Industrial Data Task Group. And there they have stated that this digital product passport has now a possibility to shape the future of industrial data. And I couldn't agree more with this, because now we can say already that DPP will move or change this data, product-related data, towards more machine-readable, also more accessible and also verifiable data. So it means that in the future, the DPP can work as a central catalyst for this digital transformation. Jaana already mentioned this green transformation part of DPP, which means that we can accelerate the circular economy business by using DPP. But I would also like to emphasize here this digital transformation part. Okay, if we then jump to the so this vision of European DPP. So the fact is that we have had these DPP-like systems already existing for decades, I would say, for different purposes. So for example, for brands, for traceability, and so on. These have been the reasons why these DPP systems and projects have been existing already. In fact, one study lists over 100 different kinds of DPP projects. But what is now different in this EU DPP is this aim towards interoperability. So the vision is that in the future, we would have these various different kinds of DPP solutions for different users, for different needs, and all these systems would interoperate with each other. And how we can achieve this kind of situation? There are now two main building blocks or soil blocks for that. First of all, this ESPR regulation, as Jaana already mentioned, it will now define basic data requirements, but also basic technical system requirements for DPP. Then this other, maybe now even more relevant progress is happening in this DPP standardization. I will have a separate slide about that, so I won't go now there, but I also mentioned these several European research projects, for example, the SIRPAS project, which also produce very valuable public material if you are interested. But they are also feeding this material to this regulation and standardization processes. Okay, then the next one, please. So here are now depicted the main building blocks of this European DPP system. So maybe the foundational rule here is that the actual DPP data will be decentralized so that it will reside in the manufacturer's systems. So there won't be any central DPP data repository provided by European Commission. Anyway, maybe you can take the next slide. Yes, so however, the European Commission will provide some centralized services which now help and facilitate the functioning of this whole DPP system. So there will be kind of look-up services for DPP data. For example, this EU registry for identifiers, it should be available next summer. Then there will be this web portal, for example, for customs use, so that they can search more efficiently the DPP-related data. Commission will also provide data catalogs, so they will provide DPP vocabularies. Then the third, maybe or very important part here is also these third-party services, which are mainly these backup services. So it means that in order to guarantee the availability of DPP information, also in that case, if the original manufacturer goes out of business, then we will need these backup services for DPP data. Okay, then the next one, please. This slide is now about this DPP standardization. So we have now the ongoing process happening in this sense European standardization body, so CENELEC, Joint Technical Committee 24. And even though the name is quite long and awful, but this is very relevant work if we think about now this DPP system development. So this work has started in the beginning of 24 and is ending this year. So it's very quick 2 years process. And now this JTC 24 is producing the standards for harmonized technical DPP system. This harmonized means that these standards will be conformant with the ESPR regulation. There are these different kinds of subtopics or different standards under this JTC 24. There are, for example, standards for data carriers, for unique identifiers, what kind of APIs we should create for DPP system, also how the DPP data should be processed, exchanged, how it can be stored, and also what kind of security mechanisms should be in place. This DPP standardization won't include this data part. So as Jaana already mentioned, these data requirements will come through these separate delegated acts for each product group. Okay, then the next one. Yes, this is another slide regarding the standards. So here is still listed these actual names of the standards that will now be published, maybe in the beginning of next year. So we will get very various standards there. One thing that I was not included to the previous slide was this system interoperability. It's also very important standard because it is now defining the actual base data model for DPP also. So it's very important to understand the DPP data in a similar way. And maybe I still want also to note that these standards, they are very relevant because if this some product will now be under these delegated acts so that the DPP will be required, then also the DPPs for that product needs to be compliant with these standards, or otherwise these products can be expelled from the European market. Okay, then the next one. Yes, so this is now about the manufacturer's perspective on this DPP system. So this is kind of quite typical DPP system if we think about the functions that are needed to get this DPP in place. If we start from the bottom, so there are now, for example, this data collection and data sharing parts in which the manufacturer should be able to collect the DPP related data from their supply chain. This JTC 24 standardization is not defining how this can be done. So I think manufacturers can quite freely select how this will happen. So for example, maybe using email, Excel sheets, maybe building some kind of APIs for that. But one thing that I would like to mention related to this one are these European data spaces. They are now the kind of technical building blocks for trustful data sharing between different organizations and stakeholders. And there the European Commission now tries to provide these kind of tools so that manufacturers, for example, can control how their data can or is shared. Then in manufacturers' back-end systems, they should modify and process the DPP-related data so that it can be made available through these APIs. And as already mentioned, this JTC24 now defines what kind of APIs the manufacturers should provide. There are, for example, APIs for creating, reading, updating, also deleting the DPP information. And maybe also one thing to note here is that the APIs are not only needed for people, so for human users, but those users can also be machines like recycling robots and so on, which need these machine readable APIs. Okay, then the next one. Here is now the picture how we have outlined the practical steps or guidelines for DPP implementation in our playbook. We don't have today time to deep dive these, but I just mentioned that we have also created this background report, which now gives the very detailed explanation of each step. So you can familiarize yourself with those. Then the next slide, please. Yes, this is kind of reminder also that once again, these JTC24 standards now have defined many aspects that are also mentioned in this DPP playbook guidelines. So please take a look also on those. And one thing that I would also like to emphasize here is now this, maybe these other steps are quite self-evident as such and maybe quite straightforward also, but this interoperability is now something that I think I have still a slide. It's my yes. Okay, so this interoperability, this is now the last thing that I would like to emphasize here, because I think that this is now very important step to pay attention to. If we really want to be successful in this DPP implementation and also in the utilization of DPP for business purposes, for example. So there are different kinds of actions. For example, in practice, adopting standardized data formats, building these efficient APIs and linkages between data, also putting that kind of data management practices in place that ensure the data quality and also data security. These all are related to kind of digital capabilities and digital maturity of companies and SMEs. So I would like to emphasize this point so that this kind of builds now and is a kind of foundation for more efficient use of DPP data, and so that also that maintaining the DPP in the long run is not that burdensome, and also this DPP data can be used for other purposes easily. For example, the sustainability reporting can be one good example. Okay, but I think yes, okay, this is my last just an advertisement about the additional very good material. So these SIRPAS and SIRPAS 2 projects, which are in Europe, the flagship DPP projects. They have produced very good material if you are interested about these technical aspects of DPP deployment. So there are, for example, this reference architecture presented, and also what might be also interesting for you is this study about the DPP costs and benefits for SMEs. Also in the SIRPAS 2, which is now ongoing project, there are these large-scale pilots, so 13 real-world deployments in different product sectors. So I very much recommend you to take a look at these also. But maybe I now stop my part.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Jana, for the wonderful presentation. I think we already have a few questions in the chat box. So now the forum is open if attendees want to question the speakers directly. Okay, so let me ask the question for you. So NOS UA has asked, what if some of supply chain participants, example abroad EU, don't provide DPPs? Does this case covered in the playbook?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
So
I can.
Yeah, now I think.
Look it. Could you repeat your question?
So the question is about if the participants are abroad, if the supply chain participants. So does this case is covered in the playbook that we discussed?
Well, not exactly, but in a long term, I would see that if someone is not providing data for the DPP, then the company have to make a decision whether they want to keep this kind of participant or not. But no, there are no any rules or guidance for this kind of situations.
So the next question is from Anna Santos. Anna, if you're present, you're open to open your mic and ask the question yourself. Okay, so the question is, if a manufacturer has already published an EPD, should they prepare an DPP as well? This is the first question from her.
I could comment here that I think that they will be these delegated acts which will define which kind of information will be needed for each product group. And maybe in some cases where already these EPDs have been required, these EPDs can be the part of DPP information. But I think that we have to wait these delegated acts.
So her first question is followed by, if the manufacturer wants to publish an EPD, is it okay to publish, or should they wait to prepare an DPP as well?
I would say that a company needs to make a decision by themselves. So think about what kind of benefit they would get if they publish an EPD already earlier than a DPP, because I think that a great deal of EPD data can also be utilized in a DPP. And the third question was, Kristina already mentioned that in Sirpas, or was it in Sirpas 2 project, there was a cost estimation for SME regarding DPP.
Yeah, and this cost question, it's very dependent on the level, how much data has to be collected, for example. And of course, there is always a possibility for a single manufacturer whether to produce this DPP system by themselves or buy it as a service. And this is also one thing that maybe have an effect on the costs also.
Okay, so shall we move on to the next question? So the next question is about if the data taxonomy from the EU services for the passport services and data catalogs are already available. The question is about the availability of the data taxonomy.
As I mentioned, this semantic or this system interoperability standard draft now has this basic data model for DPP. I think it's now one good source of information, but then these Sirpas projects, as I mentioned the links in the end of my presentation, they have also produced many kinds of assessments, what kind of data should be available in DPP. There are these semantic frameworks and others defined, and also many product categories like batteries, textiles, electronics. I think they are pretty well covered, and you get the good examples what kind of data will be really now needed. Of course, the actual delegated acts will make the final definitions on the requirements, but I think you get very good hints by looking at those.
I mentioned afterwards the link is not working. So this project results for Sirpas is not available if you go on the website.
Okay, so maybe because I think we are sending now the actual recording of this all of you later, so we can put the operational links also there if they are, but also you can find it's Sirpas and Sirpas 2. It's also easy to find.
Yeah, so this is what I mean. If you go on sirpasproject.eu and you try to click either on the project results or on the see the event presentation recordings and Q&A, both of them are not working. So it's the user gets something like where was this? A minute. Sirpas results. I'm clicking here. There has been a critical error on this website. Learn more about troubleshooting WordPress. So this is not available.
So
okay, this is very weird, but we have to also test, but I think they should be there. I think this is now some kind of error situation happening because I just checked them, was it a couple of days ago, and they were just working fine. So yeah.
So maybe, but regarding the slides will be shared shortly with the participants. And that is the end of the questions. I would also like to ask the participants to share their valuable feedback. I will now share the QR for you to scan and share your valuable feedback. This is really helpful for us moving forward with other webinar or with any other inputs that you guys would like to share. I'm also sharing the link in the chat for you to give the feedback. So thank you guys thank you speakers for the session, and also all the participants for their support today.